Thank you very much for taking time to watch this presentation by the Citizens for Public Accountability. We're people just like you who are very concerned about how our senators, without our permission, became the third highest paid senators in the United States. But in order to understand our story, we have to go back to the beginning, which is the Declaration of Independence. In the Declaration of Independence, our founders made the following statement. Governments are instituted among men deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That's us. We are the governed. We are the people that elect officials to government, and supposedly those officials will represent us. So, let me ask you this question. How many of you authorized a 54.5% pay raise for our elected officials? I know I didn't. So, where does this 54.5% number come from? Well, currently our senators are making $85,000 a year. Prior to this, they were making $55,000 a year. That's $30,000. And when you take the $30,000 and divide it by their base salary, we come up with a 54.5% increase. So how did we get to $85,000? We did it in two steps. Step one was a technical adjustment. In that technical adjustment, they went from 55,000 to 61, 11% increase. Now, when the news of this hit the public, Senator Bob Klitsky pointed out that this was potentially an illegal raise, even though it was a technical adjustment. And the reason it was potentially illegal was there was no public hearing and no notice. Step two, we went from $61,000 to $85,000. It was a $24,000 pay raise, or 39%. I don't know about you, but I've never in my life gotten a 39% pay raise. But what makes this really bad is it was post-election. Just imagine how different the campaign would have been in 2014 if all the candidates for office had told us that upon election, we will vote ourselves a $24,000 pay raise. How many of you would have voted for those senators? I certainly wouldn't have. Again, it was potentially illegal because they did it with no notice and no public hearing. But what was really a problem for me and many other people was the fact they made it retroactive to the preceding year. So, in other words, on the 27th or 28th of November, our senators got a $24,000 bonus just in time for Christmas shopping. Now, their supporters tell us that Guam senatorial compensation is comparable to that of many of their counterparts in the U.S. Let's take a look at that claim. Here are the only 12 states that pay their elected officials more than $50,000. And at $55,000 a year, Guam senators were number 10. Now with a technical adjustment, they jumped from number 10 to number 7. And you would have thought they would have been happy being the 7th highest paid senators in the entire United States. But they thought to themselves, if 7 is good, 3 is better. And that's where we are today. The senators on Guam just barely edged out by the senators in Pennsylvania to become the 3rd highest paid senators in the United States. Well, a lot of their supporters will tell you that our senators work hard. They really do work hard, and therefore they deserve $85,000 a year. Well, let's take a look at that. Here we have Guam compared to California at number 1. Population of Guam, 159,000. Population of California, 37 million. The budget for Guam was $827,000. The budget for California, $138 billion. Now, the salary in California is higher, but look at the representation. Each senator on Guam represents 10,624 people. Each senator in California represents twice the population of Guam. And then we look at the cost. It's very important. Here on Guam, every man, woman, and child pays $8 a year for our senators. In California, they pay 31 cents a year for each senator. Number 2, Pennsylvania. 12 million, nearly 13 million people, nearly $30 billion budget, and the senators in Pennsylvania only earn $338 more than Guam. Each senator in Pennsylvania represents about a third of the population of Guam, and each senator in Pennsylvania costs their citizens $1.69 a year. Number 4, New York. 20 million people, $141 billion budget, and their senators earn less than the senators here on Guam. And their senators represent each senator almost represents the population of Guam at a cost per man, woman, and child of 60 cents per year. But up to this point, we've been talking about states. Let's take a look at an island, Puerto Rico. Nearly 4 million population, nearly 10 billion budget. The senators there earn 12,000 less than senators on Guam, and senators in Puerto Rico represent nearly 1/3 the population of Guam at a cost per citizen of $1.54. But Puerto Rico's in the Atlantic. Let's look at something a little closer to home, like Hawaii. Hawaii has a population of 1.5 million, a state budget of $12 billion. The senators there earn about 2/3 what the senators on Guam make, and each senator in Hawaii represents about 18,000 people, 8,000 more than the senators on Guam, at a cost less than half of senators on Guam. But the last state that pays more than $50,000 a year is Alaska, and they have 4 times the population of Guam, 6 times the budget. They earn 2/3 of what Guam senators, less than 2/3 what Guam senators make, and each senator in Alaska represents 3 times as many people as Guam does at a cost of $1.42 per citizen. So what is the justification for that $85,000 a year? Obviously, the senators on Guam don't work harder than the senators in those other states. So what could their justification possibly be? Well, the senators have told us that we needed to pay them $85,000 a year to attract better qualified people to run for office. Well, if that's true, that's kind of, when I hear that, it's almost like we're being held hostage. That in order for us to get good government, we have to pay more. This is the #1 selling magazine of 1973, and I think it captures that statement accurately. But if we needed to pay $85,000 to attract good senators, what kind of people ran for office at 61? What kind of people were attracted to public service at $61,000 a year? That's right. Every single one of the current sitting senators ran for office when the compensation was $61,000 a year. So obviously it wasn't the money that attracted them to the public office. Which brings us to this statement here. Integrity is what you do when no one is watching. And that's important when we consider how our senators became the 3rd highest paid senators in the United States, especially with the retroactive. So, why should we trust them? Why should we trust their statements when you consider that they were elected on November 4th, 17 days later, Acting Governor Ray Tenorio sent a bill to House Speaker Judy Wonpat. And in that bill, they violated the standing rules of the legislature on special sessions. But that wasn't it. They didn't stop there. They also violated Government of Guam law on special meeting notice They violated government of Guam law on the definition of emergency conditions under which they could call special meetings. And then they violated government of Guam open government law. And then just a couple of days later, remember, the 21st was a Friday. On the following Tuesday, they signed their pay raise into law. So if you can't trust the people who write the laws to follow the laws, who can you trust? That's why I bring this up. All evil needs to triumph is for good men to do nothing. And by watching this video, you are doing something. So, when I look at the pay raises, here's the concerns I have. Strike one, an 11% raise with no hearing. Followed by strike two, which is a 39% pay raise with no hearing. Now, when that pay raise passed, Senator Mike Nicholas was quick to introduce a bill to repeal the pay raises. Here's the pay raise legislation. Here's the voting sheet on that bill. Senator Atta voted to keep the money. Senator Tony Atta voted to keep the money. Senator Uggan voted to keep the money. Senator Cruz voted to repeal the pay raise. Senator Chris Duenas voted to keep the money. And what's ironic, even though he lost office, he got a $24,000 bonus for the previous year. So he got the pay raise even though he was voted out of office. Senator Mike Limtiaco, off island. Senator Brant McCready voted to keep the pay raise. Senator Morrison voted to keep the pay raise. Senator Barnes, off island, absence excused. Senator Respicio voted to keep the pay raise. Senator Rodriguez voted to keep the pay raise. Senator Mike Nicholas, author of the bill, of course, obviously voted to repeal the pay raise. Senator and Speaker Judy Wampat was off island, absence excused, and Senator Eileen Yamashita voted to keep the pay raise even though she was voted out of office. So, as a result of our senators who wanted to keep the pay raise, Bill 435 was defeated. But come January, when the 33rd legislature was seated, Senator Mike Nicholas introduced the first bill on the pay raise issue, and it was defeated, of course. But part of the bill survived, and that part of the bill that survived required that all future changes in compensation for the governor and lieutenant governor, public hearings were mandatory. Now remember that. That becomes important later on. In October of 2015, the students of Simon Sanchez did a survey and discovered that 76% of Guam's voters were upset and opposed the pay raise for elected officials. Now that was at the end of October, and our senators were quick to jump on the bandwagon, and they held public hearings in November of 2015. And in those public hearings, a lot of people came out and testified in opposition of the pay raises. I testified on behalf of the Citizens for Public Accountability because when we read the bill, we saw that the bills were doomed to fail. There were two bills, Bill 201 from Senator McCready and Bill 204 from Senator Nicholas. The way the bills were written, we realized they were doomed. They would not pass. So we recommended to the senators that they change the bills, that they break the bills into 4 separate bills. One for the governor and lieutenant governor, one for the department directors, one for the senators, and one for the mayors. And then hold public hearings and pass each bill individually. Now, my theory is the reason they didn't do that is because they knew that if they did that, there was a lot of support for the governor and lieutenant governor at that time, and the department heads and the mayors. The only group that didn't have any support was the senators. So they fought hard, once again, to keep their bill, to keep their pay raise. So, Bill 201 went defeated, and Bill 204 was defeated. But the public didn't stop talking about the pay raises. And as a result, Senator Respicio in the committee gave CPR to Bill 204, held a hearing on it without notice, and they passed it. So remember that little clause that we talked about earlier? Well, we violated that law in passing Bill 204 again. But the bill didn't pass with the veto-proof majority, and Governor Calvo vetoed the pay raise repeal bill. So I went to the senators, the 6 senators, to try to change their minds. I talked to Senator Tony Atta. Well, I didn't talk to him. He wouldn't return my calls or meet with me, and so he voted to keep the money. Senator Frank Blas voted to keep the money. Senator Brant McCready voted to keep the money. Senator Tommy Morrison voted to keep the money. Senator Tina Muñoz Barnes voted to keep the money, as did Senator Dennis Rodriguez. The 6 of them voted to keep the money, and as a result, the veto override failed, and our elected officials got to keep their massive retroactive pay raises. And again, that override vote, the veto override vote, was called without a public hearing. I just happened to be in the legislature at the time when they called it to the floor. Which brings us to this quote by Socrates: "If you always do what you've always done, you will always get what you've always got." Currently, 92% of the voters on Guam believe that the pay raise initiative should be put on the ballot to roll back the pay raises, since our elected officials have proved themselves incapable of hearing what the public demands and acting on it. And that's why we have put together the Elected Official Compensation Act that will be on the ballot this coming November. In that initiative, we are proposing to roll back the raises for the governor, the lieutenant governor, and senator salaries to the 2014 level. And the second part is to make sure that all future pay raises for public officials, elected public officials, are done by public referendum. In other words, if they want to raise their salaries, they have to put it on a ballot and get approval from the people, the governed. Naturally, our senators don't like that idea. And that's why we are focusing on the Gang of 6 who fought so hard to keep the pay raises. Senators Morrison, McCready, Barnes, Atta, Rodriguez, and Frank Blas, and I added Respicio, so we've raised the Gang of 6 to the Gang of 7 because of the efforts that Senator Respicio has gone through to engineer the situation to make sure that the pay raises stay in place. But we can do something about it this coming primary election. Your vote controls Guam's future, and so we are encouraging everybody out there to make sure that you register to vote. And if you aren't sure if you're registered or not, go to your local village mayor's office and make sure that you are registered to vote, because your vote controls Guam's future. If you want more information on this presentation or upcoming presentations, you can go to our website at guamc4pa.org, or you can look at our Facebook page, facebook.com/guamc4pa. And in upcoming videos, we will talk about what kind of government we have gotten for our money. I thank you very much for watching this video, and I ask that you share this video with your friends and family and associates, and together we can take control of the legislature away from professional politicians and special interests and make it once again the people's house. Thank you.